Have you ever noticed that your most reasonable decisions have sometimes produced your least alive life? And before you say, okay, smartass, but what exactly am I supposed to do? Bills are real, children need food, landlords continue their deeply inconvenient attachment to rent. Surely I cannot simply keep my soul fully intact at all times and expect the electricity company to be moved by my authenticity. Correct. But what if the choice does not have to be between becoming a highly successful employee of your own internal prison or quitting your job to become a barefoot moon priestess with no retirement plan? For anyone who has just stumbled into this strange little independent media company called Chaotic Wise Girl. So, here's the thing. There's a city, not on any official map, but somewhere between Stockholm, a corporate boardroom, and inside of your own anxious thoughts. A place known as Gothenburg. A city built on the deeply held belief that if everyone would simply follow the manual correctly, existence would finally stop being so inconvenient. Around here, people don't collapse dramatically. No, that would be unprofessional. Instead, they slowly lose contact with themselves in highly respectable ways. They develop jaw tension, professionally, and they answer emails while quietly wondering whether this can possibly be what all of evolution was working toward. These documents are unauthorized transmissions from that place, filed by Chaotic Wise Girl, part cartoon, part field researcher, part suspiciously well-dressed government whistleblower. Her exact employment status remains unclear. Together with the ragdoll oracle cat and, well, me, Chaotic Wise Girl investigates what happens when a human organism attempts to function more like a complex adaptive system after years of attempting to operate as a spreadsheet inside environments where spreadsheet thinking appears to have gained significant administrative influence, aka a long-term investigation into whether decades of suppressing inconvenient thoughts, feelings, and impulses in exchange for appearing as a responsible adult was actually the brilliant strategy Gothenburg claimed it would be. Current findings remain complicated. Current status at the time of this report. Somewhere between everything is unbelievably complicated and everything is strangely, unexpectedly untangled. Atmospheric conditions include financial frustration, midsummer softness, 4 sleeping children, existential gratitude, mild housing rage, increased tolerance for uncertainty, and a growing suspicion that Gothenburg may not be as good at predicting reality as its marketing department previously suggested. Exact coordinates: a balcony, Swedish midsummer morning. The organism is seated outside with coffee. Inside a small studio apartment currently operating at approximately 247% of its originally intended human capacity. Present in the structure: 2 biological offspring belonging to the organism, 2 additional child guests acquired through the ancient human ritual known as sleepover. Sleeping arrangements include 1 enormous sofa temporarily converted into a child dormitory, 1 closet that has undergone a successful transformation into a children's bedroom, 1 hallway operating outside its original architectural job description, and 1 partner sleeping in a sleeping alcove. A Swedish design concept apparently created by a person who looked at a room and said, "What if bed, but make it a secret?" researchers remain impressed by the organism's ability to convert insufficient square meters into a functioning social ecosystem. Timestamp: morning of Swedish midsummer, several days after an unusual sequence of events involving a child vomiting during the night, the death of an old friend of the organism's former partner, an income stream that had abruptly disappeared, triggering a financial plot twist and forcing the organism to decide whether to abandon the planned period of chaotic wise girl investigation and return to regular employment 6 months earlier than intended, only to unexpectedly return to operation approximately 1 day after the organism had already submitted her final decision to her employer. No, I will not be returning earlier. A statement which, according to Gothenburg emergency protocols, should only be made by individuals with a 5-year financial plan, 3 backup plans, 6 months of savings, and a professional LinkedIn headshot involving a blazer and a concerning amount of confidence. A mythology which Chaotic Wise Girl not only disputes, but has repeatedly had the audacity to classify as a surprisingly ineffective strategy for navigating complex challenges. Anyway, current conditions can best be described as standing on a shoreline during changing weather. The organism is aware that storms exist. The organism is also aware that the weather has historically shown a shocking tendency to continue changing without first submitting a forecast for approval. This remains a difficult concept for Gothenburg. Field report. Recent years of investigation suggest a significant pattern. The more the organism being studied has applied complex adaptive systems decision-making to areas of life such as relationships, parenting, creativity, identity, health, school systems, the less life has necessarily become easy. This is an important clarification. Chaotic Wise Girl headquarters would like to strongly distance itself from any interpretation involving follow your truth and everything will become effortless. That department is located directly beside the department currently attempting to sell a PDF called Manifesting Abundance Through Aggressive Candle Ownership. So no, the current hypothesis is more annoying. Life remains difficult. Children still vomit. People still die. Money still controls access to extremely inconvenient things such as food, housing, electricity, and, regrettably, dramatically unnecessary shoes. However, a strange long-term pattern has become difficult to ignore. The areas of life that have spent the longest time under complex adaptive systems governance appear to have developed a greater capacity for adaptation. Not because all parts now agree, not because conflict has disappeared, not because the organism has achieved the mythical state of complete human optimization. No, something else appears to have happened. Previously isolated signals within the system have begun communicating again. So, systems that were once organized around suppression, rigid rules, or single authority governance appear to have regained more capacity for coordination and self-organization. Which means that when a new challenge enters the system, it does not enter a system where every department is already screaming into separate fax machines. Instead, it becomes new information, part of ongoing adaptation. The storm still arrives. The difference, however, appears to be that it enters a forest with healthier soil, more movement, more communication, more flexibility, more capacity to reorganize. Further investigation into this relationship between internal coordination and adaptive capacity is currently ongoing. Additional funding, moral support, and algorithmic cooperation may be provided by pressing subscribe. Gothenburg response. Gothenburg would like to remind the organism that it has been saying for many years. If you do not obey all conventional pathways, reality will eventually punish you. The difficulty is that reality has repeatedly failed to cooperate with this narrative. The organism received good grades, studied economics and finance, built respectable professional identities, learned how to speak fluent professional human. Unfortunately, despite excellent compliance record, the organism continued experiencing symptoms including strange thoughts, excessive curiosity, inconvenient emotions, creative impulses, and a persistent sense of being slowly internally suffocated. Findings suggest that while many conventional strategies may be highly useful for certain organisms under certain conditions, the assumption that all organisms should follow identical operating manuals has produced inconsistent results. These findings have been received with considerable discomfort by several departments within Gothenburg. The financial department incident. Since Gothenburg's more linear approach to organizing life has failed to produce the promised results for this particular organism, and since complex adaptive systems governance has proven significantly more useful in other areas of life, a controversial proposal has now been submitted. Namely, what if money is not the exception? Following a period of internal negotiations, objections, and several strongly worded reports from concerned departments, the financial department has therefore officially been admitted into the Complex Adaptive System Council. The transition remains ongoing and is considered a highly sensitive diplomatic event, because previous internal representatives include strongly opposing parties such as Ulf, known to repeatedly remind all departments that money is real, bills are real, and that we cannot, in fact, pay rent with feelings. A valid observation. Annoying, but valid. Mystic anti-Ulf, known to submit reports including money is an illusion, the capitalist construct cannot own your soul, you need nothing. Also, partially valid. However, this department has historically struggled with explaining how exactly the organism should acquire food, larger apartments, and very specific boots. Anyway, current policy update is as follows. Both departments may submit reports. Neither department receive absolute governmental power. Chaotic wise girl interpretation. A disturbing possibility has emerged. Perhaps the goal was never survive as long as possible by suppressing every unusual signal in order to appear professionally acceptable. Because if the organism reaches the end of life and reports, yes, technically I remained alive for a long time, the strategy involved slowly strangling every weird thought, uncomfortable feeling, creative impulse, and inconvenient part of myself until I became socially optimized. Chaotic Wise Girl headquarters considers this a statistically disappointing outcome. The organism has therefore submitted a revised objective. I did it my way. A phrase previously popularized by humans attempting to make deeply questionable decisions with remarkable confidence. Examples include, I sold everything and opened a ferret-based wellness retreat in the mountains. Researchers therefore acknowledge that the phrase alone does not constitute evidence of wisdom. However, the interpretation in this case appears to differ. My way does not refer to one internal department staging a revolution and declaring itself supreme leader. It refers to a system in which more relevant signals are allowed to communicate, coordinate, and participate in the ongoing self-organization of a life. In other words, the revised objective is a willingness to observe what emerges when a human organism is no longer governed as a dictatorship, but as a complex adaptive system. Emergent hypothesis. Complex adaptive system decision-making does not promise wealth, success, a larger apartment, beautiful shoes, or a dramatic montage involving financial spreadsheets catching fire. Although researchers acknowledge this would be visually satisfying. It promises something more modest, that decisions may become more coherent when more information enters the room, more internal agents receive voting rights, fear is allowed to speak but not become dictator, material reality is respected, beauty is respected, responsibility is respected, and the rainforest is also allowed to file a complaint. Inconveniently complex, but suspiciously alive. Differential diagnosis. Alternative explanations remain under active investigation. The organism has simply become older and less willing to participate in nonsense. The organism is using systems language to make uncertainty sound like a research project. Chaotic Wise Girl has successfully performed a slow administrative takeover. The organism is one inspirational quote away from accidentally becoming a philosophical raccoon. Or, the apartment is so small that the boundaries between human, child, cat, creativity, and furniture have permanently dissolved. No definitive ruling has been issued. Non-binding conclusion. Money remains unresolved. The apartment remains too small. The future remains unknown. The organism may still need additional income streams. Regular employment may still become part of the equation. No final victory parade has been scheduled. And yet, something significant has occurred. For the first time, the financial department is no longer being approached through panic, shame, rebellion, or complete denial. It has been invited to the table, which is unfortunate because it turns out money has many opinions. For fellow spiral souls, perhaps this is the work. Not finding a way to remove all difficult variables, not becoming the person who no longer wants anything, not becoming a machine of optimization, not becoming so spiritual that you can allegedly survive on sunlight and morally superior vibrations, but creating an internal government where fear has a chair, desire has a chair, responsibility has a chair, creativity has a chair, grief has a chair, and reality itself is allowed to attend the meeting. The point is not that every meeting produces the perfect answer. The point is that no single frightened bureaucrat is allowed to stage a coup. Chaotic Wise Girl headquarters status. Financial uncertainty, active. Balcony coffee, operational. Apartment capacity, suspiciously exceeding architectural limits. Children per square meter, historically high. Ulf stress levels, present but unusually quiet. Rainforest representative, still filing concerns. Unnecessary shoes department, awaiting budget approval. Complex adaptive system governance, increasingly functional. Reminders of mortality, unfortunately confirmed. Aliveness, refusing termination. Filed under when reality refuses to participate in your spreadsheet. Internal democracy under capitalism. the administrative discovery that a larger apartment requires actual currency, proceeding without full financial enlightenment, and the midsummer balcony principle. The strange discovery that a life can remain objectively complicated while becoming internally less tangled.